So a warm welcome to everyone. We have lots of participants today, so thank you very much for signing up and listening in today. We have more than 30 companies being on this call, so an extended greetings to you at this very last webinar for the year. We have an update with regard to IDMP, and we'll take you through the slides and discuss IDMP, and it's also an occasion for you to ask questions and so we can also discuss at the end. My name is Niels Bøklander. I'm heading Reg Affairs at NNIT and also part of the task force of SPOR at EMA. And with me today I have Stefan.
Hello everyone, I'm part of Niels's team and I'm heavily involved in IDMP.
Great, so what we have today on the agenda, as mentioned, it's an update regarding the IDMP initiative in terms of what it has been discussed in various forums, including the EMA SPOR task force, and of course also waiting for the interesting news also on a date, which is certainly new times for IDMP to have specific dates to discuss. We'll give you updates both on what's happening on the product side and also on the substance side, and then we'll discuss the impact on Reg Affairs and what can be done in the various IDMP projects in your companies, and then we'll end with a Q&A session before wishing each other a Merry Christmas. So let's dive into the news here. So as announced in the title of this webinar, you could say that you can derive a date for the enforcement of IDMP in Europe. You can do that by looking at the so-called implementation guide from EMA regarding the PMS system. So in the course of this year, 2020, there has been work on the implementation guide that came out in the beginning of the year. And at that point, it came out in a version 1, and it was announced that when version 2 will come out, it will set the dates for the IDMP enforcement, in the PMS enforcement, and a preliminary date was set that the version 2 of the implementation guide would come out before the end of the year, hence the end of the year 2020. At that point, it sounded very optimistic from my side, and to me it sounded more like something that would be pushed into 21. And in fact, we are at the end of the year and we have not had the publication of version 2, but we have the news that it is expected to be published on the 22nd of February 21. So it's essentially 2 months from now, and by having that announcement from EMA on a concrete date just 2 months before shows the enormous amount of work that has been put into it in this year, and also the ambition from EMA's side on really making this IDMP initiative work after the constant delays that you have also experienced in industry, especially back in 17, and due to the Brexit move from London to Amsterdam for the European Medicines Agency. So by making some calculations here, I'll show you in terms of why you could say that there is now a date also for the enforcement. If it holds true that we'll have the 22nd of February 21 as the date of the publication of version 2, it sets the date for the go live of the so-called PMS system for iteration 1 fields. And that system is precisely what is meant to capture product information included in the IDMP data model. So it's set as a 12 months period from the publication to the go live. And at that go live, industry has the option to submit IDMP information, and then 12 months from that go live, you would have the enforcement of the iteration 1 for PMS. So you could say 2 years from that publication, we will see the enforcement, and hence it is a very important aspect to have a concrete date. And although it's we don't have the document in hand yet, we've seen lots of drafts of it and worked with the various commenting and consolidation of comments in that document, and being this close to the 22nd of February, as late as today, EMA was sending an email to various stakeholders saying that this is going to come out in February. So it is an accelerating moment, you could say, in terms of us who've worked on IDMP for many years, because we've never really had a concrete date where you could that you could discuss, except for the regulation bound one, which is way past due. So if we look at other timelines along the way, and also how EMA is going to commit to the publication of version 2, you see here version 2.1 coming out, 2.2, and also a version 3. So let me just put a few words on what that is and what that means. In terms of the comments that have come through this year from industry and other stakeholders, the comments have been prioritized, and those that have the prioritization called must or high priority, they will be addressed in version 2. And the way for EMA also to make sure that the publication will take place is basically to prioritize those and make sure that those are handled in version 2, and then open up for version 2.1, 2.2 for lower priorities comments. And then by telling industry that those versions are not going to come out for consultation, which may delay the process and so on, they will be handled within the parameters of EMA's work on the comments, and essentially then go directly for publication. So it's still the case that version 2 is really the one that is setting the milestones for the next steps. And at the same time, it's also important to mention the publication of the implementation guide in version 3, because that work will also start in 21. What is meant by version 3 is that the description of the so-called target operating model for non-centralized procedures, so for the mutual recognition, decentralized and national procedures, that they will be described in that version 3 in order to secure for the step 2 of the implementation. You may have heard from other occasions that the initial go live and enforcement is aimed at centralized procedure products, and hence the version 3 and the subsequent go live of the target operating model for mutual recognition, decentralized and national procedures will happen essentially 12 months from the enforcement of the IDMP submission for centralized procedures. So we were playing a little bit with this in terms of describing. Actually, EMA has a more agile way of working with the documentation. And of course that's just our interpretation of it. It definitely moves up the agility in the publication process to work in this way, and that's something that has been prioritized by EMA in this occasion to make sure that there was sufficient information for software providers and industry in order to prepare for IDMP. But let's have a look at the various chapters in the implementation guide to have a view to the progress here. Over to you, Stefan.
Thank you, Niels, and thank you for the first overall update. And I'll try to add on to that and focusing specifically on the updates to EMA Implementation Guide version 2. As you can see, it's clear there has been a lot of progress over the last few months. The industry we've seen has been increasingly involved and has been instrumental in addressing those comments that came out of this recent consultation. And unsurprisingly, Chapter 2, containing all the data elements, has received a lot of attention, and also it's close linked to Chapter 8, where all the examples that we provided means that there will be several of these minor version releases, as we saw, version 2.1, 2.2, to address all the comments that came out of this consultation. Also, we saw Chapter 3 as is also being a very, very interesting part of the guidance. Again, significant amount of comments, and not least because it offered a very high-level guidance on the future target operating model. And we now expect that the EMA is going to release with the next version 2, 2.1 and 2.2, a much more detailed version that then the industry can use with confidence in preparation for first step 1 enforcement of PMS, and then for subsequently with version 3, step 2 as well. Perhaps with the risk to create a bit of a stir, we have learned that it was unofficially confirmed that once IDMP, always IDMP, will apply for all applicants and for their entire portfolio, which means that once you submit an IDMP submission for one of your products, all the remaining products in your entire portfolio have to be submitted as IDMP submissions going forward. Now, it means that then the plan of the industry and various companies for these small-scale pilots between go live and enforcement and now will go up in smoke. But this has not been official yet, so I would really strongly urge you to contact your IDMP expert or advisor, be it internal or external, and ask them to closely follow this issue. It, of course, concerns you and you have centrally approved products, at least for step 1. Perhaps also what's worth mentioning is this is also hot off the press from the last EU Sport Task Force meeting only a few hours ago, is that there will be a new update to the EU telematics strategy for 2021, and that would also reflect some changes to the projects like CESP that has evolved now into a completely different name, and also electronic product information. But keep an eye on these things; they will come out next year. So combined with the target operating model, keep an eye on the telematics strategy, because that will give you an idea as well of some timelines and where the EMA see things happening, and which is going to be a bit more of a priority. Obviously, on this once IDMP, always IDMP issue, it was surprising for us. It was a really surprising move because it does create potential issues with any challenges that from a technical perspective, the IDMP submissions could present to new submissions, and also the compliance variations. So it's really important to make sure you keep an eye on these things and ensure that you don't run into issues. But I'm sure that the EMA has also going to consider this as well for the future, because that could cause potential problems on the market. Over to you, Niels.
Thank you, Stefan. Yeah, so we can actually just ask you as listeners in terms of having a little poll in terms of where you either have started your implementation for EMA Iteration 1 of IDMP, or whether you anticipate to be starting up at the publication of version 2, perhaps, or moving later into 21, or perhaps even 22. So we'll be curious to see the result of that, and I believe that you should have your poll open so you can click in terms of where you are in your various organizations. Great. So thanks for clicking that in, and we can see here on the statistics that about 15% of organizations have already started. 35% are expecting to start in Q1, Q2, 21, and 22% are expected to start in the second half of 21, and 11% in 22. So it seems that the vast majority will start their IDMP implementation next year. Right, thanks very much. Let's ask you also a second poll in terms of whether you expect to be able to meet the deadlines for within the 2 years of the publication of implementation guide version 2. So option 1 being yes, 2 is no. It may be that it's not applicable. So in case you don't have centralized procedure products in your portfolio, that would be option 3. And you may also be uncertain about your ability to meet the enforcement. But let's have this poll as well. Great. So high confidence that you will meet the requirements. No one said no, which is perhaps also understandable in terms of the compliance requirement that is behind that. So for some, it may not apply the deadline in terms of not having centralized procedure products, but also some are unsure whether to be able to meet the requirements. All right, thank you. So let's move on to the substance area. I think it's important to emphasize the background for the substance area. It's before we give the actual dates and updates on what's happening in the substance area. So Stefan, why don't you describe the role of EMS systems in regards to substance, but also here in this slide with regard to organizations and referentials.
Absolutely, thank you, Niels. Yeah, indeed, we have a few updates, and Niels is going to give you a few updates we have in store for you regarding SMS and EUSRS from the latest EMA communication internally to the stakeholders. But before we get there, I just wanted to kind of give you a quick glimpse into the place, as Niels said, the SMS and EUSRS play into what we see as the future, maybe not final, but still draft EMA SPOR model. Now, firstly, just as we're getting used to saying SPOR, it may not be long before we have to start saying SOR, as P and SPOR strictly isn't considered as foundational master data, and it's obviously separated also in the model, in the SPOR model. And we see the EMA acting as a one-stop shop for reg data. We see them as also a broker between various parties and also facilitating MDM translations. So we have the data owners on the left, such as the EDQM, ISO, WHO, and also FDA when we talk about substances, where the EMA is either completely hosting their master data in their own system in the O or the R or the S of the master management system, master data system, or via an integration for some data owners like Medra, where the data is still owned by Medra, but there's an access provided via RMS. Obviously, all this data is made available to both the product management system, or PMS, and then obviously subsequently to the EMA and all the European NCAs, but also to the industry as well, where this could be either used for purposes for submissions, but also could be used for internal purposes, communication between various other parties, whether they are other NCAs or internally within departments. And so where the SMS comes into play, it would offer a simplified list of substances where the substance ID will be required for submissions only. And that substance ID, this SMS ID, will be basically the EU TCT ID that exists today. So there'll be no surprises there. Now, SMS is going to be publicly available, but parts of the so-called EU SRS will be confidential, as there's going to be a lot of information that's aligned with either IDMP requirements for scientific identification of substances, such as chemical structures, references, and relationships, etc. And it's important that the industry will use the SMS as the portal and the means to request new substances or any other changes like update to existing substances and so on. And if they're approved, then these updates will be published in both systems. What you cannot see on the slide is that when the assessment of your change request is being carried out, the substance validation group that's responsible for the EU SRS will actually review and either approve or reject or ask for more information on your request. But also they would perform a further step into aligning the EU SRS with the so-called GSRS or GINUS, what we know as the FDA substance database. So that's going to ensure this further alignment between the EU and US in terms of substances. And with that, I would like to hand over to Niels, who will tell you a bit more about the latest updates from the EMA.
Yeah, so at EMA's meeting in terms of substance updates, there was quite a few updates actually on the work in the EU SIS, and although the SMS project is still officially on hold, all the news regarding EU SIS were really great to see. So there is work on cleansing of substances and for vet substances that will conclude in January 2021, and then the cleansing of human substances will continue in 21 and 2022, and the focus is on chemicals and vaccines in order to align with the go live date of the PMS for the iteration 1 information. So the synchronization between SMS and EU SIS is important for the reasons that Stefan just explained, and there is being looked at in terms of how that synchronization will take place, and also to secure that there's no delays in that synchronization. But due to the fact that it is two systems, there may be a slight delay in that synchronization. So that was a quick update on the substance part, and I think what is interesting at this point is what do these updates actually mean for you as industry? What does it mean for your projects? And as you answered in the poll, that many projects will take place or start up in 21. We certainly see that lots of projects have also started up in 20, so many have already come well underway in terms of mapping data and creating awareness and so on. But Stefan, there's a number of actions that you could take at this point.
Absolutely. First action to take is keep calm in IDMP. It's going to happen. The EMA, I think, is pretty much aware that things are they're also in uncharted territory. They're exploring this completely new way of working. They've become agile, which is, I think, a big step for them as well, as we discussed in the beginning. So I think as long as we keep focused on what we're doing and we're doing it, it's going to happen. It just takes time. But I think the 5 most important things you need to consider are, first of all, stay up to date. As we saw with the recent developments in Chapter 3, you need to rely on your IDMP experts, your IDMP advisor, to make sure that they give you the right updates on time, because things change very quickly. Decisions are being sometimes shifted, overturned, depending on what's being discussed. So make sure you're being updated, and then also if you could participate in any of the industry volunteering groups, please do so, because that's more than helpful. obviously the chapter or version 2 of the implementation guide is coming out. We saw February, that's the confirmed date. The EMA is confident. Even if there may be a slight delay here and there, you have to keep momentum of IDMP preparations, because whatever the delay is, it won't be a matter of years. It's going to be a matter of probably weeks or days. And look beyond centrally approved products. PMS iteration 1, step 1 is almost here, but EU implementation guide version 3 is coming very, very soon. And most of the products, most probably, that you have in your company are also a product of MRP TCP procedures or nationally approved products. So make sure that you prepare for those. So when you do your IDMP preparation, think about these products as well. Don't just leave them on the side as something to do later on. And something is maybe a bit more practical is that you have to make sure you map your substances, your referentials in your organizations, and ask the EMA to add anything that's missing or anything that's wrong to be corrected, because it takes time. The EMA is low on resources. They take a lot more time than before to cleanse or to address these requests, to cleanse the information, and you have to use it at one point. And if it's wrong, you have to choose from the wrong information, and that's not what you want to do. And last but not least, it's been a long time. We had version 1 that kind of reinvigorated the industry into going back to IDMP, but raise awareness and train your employees, because it's very easy to forget about the IDMP standards, and it's also time of change. Make sure that your stakeholders that are currently on your project know what's going on with IDMP and what IDMP is. Niels, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, so we come to the conclusion of the webinar, and we'll move into Q&A in just a second. We will just, in terms of you will receive after the webinar or tomorrow the slides from this webinar, and also the recording, and as well our brochure on IDMP as well. So in that brochure, you'll be able to read regarding the various services that we work on in terms of business analysis, change management, data governance services, preparing RIM systems for IDMP, data quality services, and the data modeling and architecture that comes in the wake of the IDMP initiative. So you will get those as a handout. So let's take any questions from the audience. And I see here that there's a question on XEVMPD, whether XEVMPD will be closed down, and that's actually not the case. It's true that you would be submitting information as IDMP in a FHIR message, and there will be closing down of the XEVMPD message, the so-called EVMPR message. But the actual Article 57 database will continue, because it contains pharmacovigilance information, it contains safety case information, and that will continue to be used. And hence, it's actually one of the systems that will consume information from the SPOR systems. There is a question regarding RIMS providers. They have an IDMP roadmap. How far will this take us, and what is not covered? So it's true that that many RIM providers have the IDMP roadmap built into their their application roadmap, and that essentially means that the data model will typically be expanded with fields that are that can give the IDMP compliance, and it also requires functionality in relation to that. But certain things are not covered in terms of what about other systems, what about the data quality in the system that needs to be monitored, what about the processes for the submission teams, because in addition to to getting the dossier together. You would also need to get your IDMP data ready, and that has various implications for the overall submission process that needs to be adjusted and taken into consideration, that you have this data element as part of your submission. And any other questions at this point? So an extension here to everyone, a greeting from EMA and all the work that has been done in the context of EMA on IDMP. We received a very nice Christmas card from the executive director and the staff at EMA, and certainly also from the NNIT Regulatory Affairs group. We extend the wishes for the season, and thank you very much for a very different year, I would say, for 2020, but with a lot of customer interaction and a lot of projects starting up in 2020 in order to digitize our reg affairs and move to the next level of applying technology to help regulatory affairs. So thank you very much for listening in, and have a very good Friday and weekend and break in relation to Christmas and New Year's. Thank you very much.